going to show you what happens when you don't pay. Ow. Hi everybody, this is Cosmic Weapon of Thule. This is the Winter Solace podcast for December 2025. You can find me on wintersolaceproductions.com. We have our merch at myspreadshop.com, YouTube at Kyoto Roller Derby, Instagram Cosmic Weapon of Thule, XWS_CWOT, Telegram, Facebook, eBay, and we now have a new Substack, cosmicweaponofthule.substack.com, and that's going to be used to deliver a lot of other content that's better resolved in a written form, and this is similar to, this is like my own version of Truth Social, seeing as I don't have a platform to post a lot of this stuff on anymore, and start discussions and start dialogue. So we have that, and then people can share that wherever they want. And then I accept donations via Cash App at Wintersauce CWOT, and then obviously your web shop, wintersauceproductions.com. Now, I am experimenting with a new delivery system for the podcast, which you can see. We got PowerPoint now, which I've had this entire time. And for this segment, this podcast is not planning on having the traditional 6 segments. It is Sunday, December 7th, and I think it's around 10:30 in the morning. I don't have my watch on me. Now, the purpose of this segment, and I'm going to ask this question: what does derangement syndrome, be it Asrar derangement syndrome, Trump derangement syndrome, Winter Solace derangement syndrome, any derangement syndrome, anything people are riled up about, Pete Buttigieg's stupid racist roads, and MTG leaving Congress all have in common. Okay, now I'm going to cover some of this article in the one of the other segments, but on our new Substack, I have posted a rather lengthy article entitled Asrar Derangement Syndrome about this label, and I would encourage everyone to read it. I've gotten around 450 views of the article alone, which is more than almost all of our LP presses except one. Grom we did 500 of, but this article will eclipse that. At this point in time, as word gets around and it's consistently recirculated. And I'm just talking about, in this instance, derangement syndrome in general, and more specifically, Trump derangement syndrome, which the left is finally acknowledging is a real thing. And while Wikipedia and all those other places say it's not in any medical dictionary, basically, it's where you're so fixated on something that it alters how you function, it affects your daily lives, and you lose the ability to distinguish necessarily. They say distinguish fantasy from reality, but the more apt approach would be to not properly interpret reality. Because I will be honest, who the President of the United States is does not greatly impact my life. I can still go to sleep. I can still wake up in the morning. I still have food. I can still eat food. I can still go to work. All of those things still exist. Society has not been so fundamentally altered that it's a problem. Okay, like the Holocaust. All of those people's lives were fundamentally altered by that. You will notice that reality is basically watered down and is a lot weaker since then, as you don't have many events like that in modern society. The Ukraine war, that's different, and that's a serious problem that those people there have to deal with, and their fundamental reality is altered. But certain people just kind of have their whole perceptions altered, so that's just derangement syndrome. I think a more broad term would just be derangement syndrome, not naming it after a person, but anyway, that's that. So what does that have in common with Pete Buttigieg's racist roads?
As to where we target those dollars, I'm still surprised that some people were surprised when I pointed to the fact that if a highway was built for the purpose of dividing a white and a black neighborhood, or if an underpass was constructed such that a bus carrying mostly black and Puerto Rican kids to a beach, or it would have been, in New York was designed too low for it to pass by, that obviously reflects racism that went into those design choices. I don't think we have anything to lose by confronting that simple reality, and I think we have everything to gain by acknowledging it and then dealing with it, which is why the Reconnecting Communities, that $1 billion, is something we want to get to work right away putting to work.
Okay, Pete Buttigieg's racist roads. Okay, this is a transportation secretary under the Biden administration who would expound or take the pointless theory of how roads were constructed to fundamentally be disproportionately affect people who were not white. And so thus they should, in theory, pay to have studies done to determine if people of other ethnicities were impacted by how a government road was constructed. Now that has its roots actually in globalist Democrat racism, progressivism from the New Deal. In 1933, faced with a housing shortage, the federal government explicitly designed to increase and segregate America's housing stock. Under the New Deal, tenement a state-sponsored system of segregation. And in this, what they talk about is how people were shuttered around and located in areas, and this would subsequently affect the property value. So if you wanted to drive down the property values of the inner city, you would bus in migrants and other people and relocate them there, where they would, who are an underclass that are perpetually cut down by drugs and other things and a lack of capital and a lack of resources, and they are disproportionalized. And that would drive down the property values of the entire neighborhood. So people could come in, and then when they're all destroyed, private development firms and private equity and venture capital could just buy up all of the land very cheaply. This is somewhat one of the things with the migrant crisis that goes on. However, that's more for voting. However, the whole premise is you take a bunch of people that are culturally incompatible with whatever is there, and you drive down, thus driving down the value of the land. And then some other entity comes in and buys it in for pennies of a dollar. And the best example of how this worked is how the colonization of America, where the Native Americans were given smallpox and everything else for all of their land that they simply weren't using. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't need an entire state's worth of land. No one does. To live and function. They do not need no human being does. I mean, yeah, people probably own that in their own private islands and crap, but all of that is just an excess of wealth. That's where all that's rooted in. But what does that have in common? So what does derangement syndrome and Pete Buttigieg's boiled down, completely useless theory of racist roads have in common with MTG leaving Congress? Now, this for me basically kind of was the, MAGA failed here. This is their big failure. Because it's currently within the Republican Party a civil war, mostly between the Zionists and anti-Zionists, and people who are not anti-Zionists basically saying America first. And which in reality is, yes, a position people should adopt. However, I'll be honest, and I've said this on other podcasts, Israel's just a country, bro. And at some point, a balance has to be struck there, because people on the right and just get this raging fixation and hard-on for Israel, when similar to all of this does not impact anyone's real daily lives that's watching this. Okay? I mean, yes, if you're Palestinian, Israel existing is a problem for you, but yeah. But they're not the people that are fixated on it in this way. Okay, and what happened with MTG in Congress was during she went against Trump, who then turned on her, mostly over her positions on AIPAC and the release of the Epstein files and a desire to see the H-1B visas reformed when this is one of the other many problems of immigration that nobody really knows how to solve because it's perpetually broken on purpose. However, many people on the Republican media called her a traitor, completely turned on her, compared her to Nancy Pelosi over insider trading. However, I do not believe any of the people who voted for MTG care if she fucking went and ripped off a bunch of stock. In all of this, there was a very interesting pivot. And that's going to further expound the point of this. The House of Representatives voted 427 to 1, and that one guy can go and get destroyed by the right-wing media, and is a failure, and is a disgrace, and he should be primaried, and absolutely nobody cares about that guy. That one guy. Fuck that guy. Voted 427 to 1 to release all of the files related to Epstein that were not released or something. And then the Senate subsequently that afternoon goes, well, we do not need to amend anything that the House sends here past 427 to 1. We're just going to move this along. They voted unanimously to release the files. Trump then signed the bill into law, and now Pam Bondi had 30 days for all this crap to be published unless it violates national security concerns. And part of the reason Trump doesn't want anything in this is he is named in there as working as an asset for who knows who to attempt to set Epstein up, even though everyone knows at this point that was an intelligence honeypot operation to just blackmail everybody, similar to what fucking P. Diddy was in the rap industry. Everyone knows that, and I personally don't necessarily see why a lot of details of all of that need to be published with everybody fucking obsessing over it. It's never going to be enough at this point because of how badly it was handled with people claiming information was withheld or redacted or just made stuff up, and it's just hysteria. However, it probably at this point needs to be published so people can move on, and this is why you're just transparent to begin with. But what I want to look at and illustrate here is how do you go from everybody arguing and having autism over Epstein and MTG leaving Congress, how do you pivot from that debate, that subject matter, how do you make a quick pivot from that to the only thing the entire country has been able to agree upon in probably my entire lifetime or within recent memory, with the exception of one fucking piece of shit guy no one cares about? How do you make that pivot? That makes no sense. That's what all these things have in common. And the hysterical reactions and the pivots that make no sense, this mirrors the pattern of drug usage or people whom are alcoholics or whatever, who when they get in conflicts with people and they do, or drama with people, they respond in ways where you go, that makes absolutely no sense. Why someone would react this way. Like Jimmy Kimmel, that comment that he made, that was about Antifa or whatever, he was instructed to go put that out there to cause a bunch of PR and drama. And all these other people, like all of these anti-Trump people in Hollywood or whatever that go and make all these statements or whatever that make no sense, and it's like, oh no, they used to be alcoholics. Like Stephen King used to be an alcoholic. He outlined his creative process at that time during Cujo, when he wrote Cujo, a book that he claims he doesn't even remember writing. And while I like his novels, I don't pay attention to anything he politically said. Okay, like I remember reading Cujo in high school, and there was a writer character in there who would like just do a bunch of coke and then jerk off and then write. That was his creative process, and that's just brain damage. Okay, so where's all the drugs? Here, you have all three different things, occurrences, from a different light or whatever that you don't know what to do with. Okay? Like, I'm not on drugs. MTG and all those people probably aren't on drugs. Pete Buttigieg and all the leftists, they may be on drugs. But it wouldn't even be the same drugs. And this concept, reality is a drug, and this concept is commonly illustrated mostly in religious mythology and what is known as Maya, or illusionary magic, or the veil of Maya, and it comes specifically, I'm going to explain another concept in a bit, but Now, I'm going to actually have to read this. This is a publication. This is one page of Maya, Reality is Illusion, and this was originally written by Miguel Serrano. Maya. We have lived and live in an illusionary world where no one knows who is who and whether in speaking with a specific person we speak with the speaking with a specific person we speak with the real one or with someone who does not exist. Nowadays, duplication is plagiarized by a scientific elite in the service of the satanic minority that controls the world. Thus, everything is illusionary is Maya, as the Hindus define reality. Nevertheless, the Avatar did not lose the war. He won the war by losing. He said as much, if I materially lose this war, the demons will destroy the world. And the earth is at the doors of her end. We who have fought for the myth and the legend of the ultimate Avatar, we shall attentively await the gallop of Sleipnir, the white horse, and his rider, who with his sword of fire will hurl into the abyss of Muspelheim the demons that have poisoned the universe. Now that, like the Bible, is an allegory. Miguel Serrano deduced all of this. What is the illusionary world? We have lived and live in an illusionary world where no one knows who is who and whether in speaking with a specific person we speak with the real one or with someone who does not exist. What does that sound like to you? Communicating with people on the internet, which is subsequently where all our news media functions, where all of that is at that level, in that space, in that reality. That is the illusionary, false reality. I have been saying since I started doing all these podcasts years ago, 5-6 years ago or whatever, that reality isn't real, and this is just more evidence of that fact. We are all trapped in this paradigm, and the name for that paradigm is the Mayasabha. The Mayasabha, and this is in Hinduist mythology, known as the Hall of Illusions, is a legendary place described in the Indian epic the Mahabharata, located in Indraprastha. It was constructed by Maya, the magic, also referred to as Mayasura. Now, Maya was a guy of the Asura class who was also named after this magic. It was built for the gods, the ruling class, after their settlement in some location. The palace is renowned for its extraordinary beauty, intricate design, and symbolic representation of wealth, power, and divine favor. So where is the Mayasabha? The Mayasabha. Where is this reality? Where is this Hall of Illusions? Well, like everything else in religious texts, it's an allegory. Reality, which isn't real, is the drop. It's where Pete Buttigieg's racist roads are. It's where MTG fighting Congress is. That's where the Zionists are. That's where the derangement syndrome is. That's where all of this is. It's in this void, this cyclic area that exists on the internet. The media cycle, everything. That is basically the delivery method. You are addicted to being in this reality. These technologies are harmful. The best book to describe this subject, and I had a copy and I donated it to my local library, is Irresistible, The Rise of Addictive Technology and the Business of Keeping Us Hooked by Adam Alter. Before social media and phones started being widely used, you didn't have terms like FOMO, which is the fear of missing out. And then you have people with smartphones because you get addicted into this cycle that alters with you. If people unfriend you on Facebook, you get pissed off. It can lead to a psychological dependence on social media. Doom scrolling, where you sit and check your Instagram feed all the time. Mean world syndrome is a perception of cognitive bias that the world is more harmful than it actually is. Cultivation theory, TV, This is Wikipedia's AI just going and telling me things it thinks I want to hear to go along with this, what I've been searching and talking about. Probably because my computer's listening to me. But anyway, that's what's happening here. You go and you find all of this wherever you're at. This theory that reality is the addictive drug that we're all messed up on. Okay, and then here's a summary of the book, Irresistible, and this is done by AI. Irresistible explores the rise of behavioral addictions, explaining how companies design products like social media and apps and games to be addictive through psychological hooks, making them hard to put down. Discusses how these tools manipulate our brains for continuous engagement, impacting sleep, focus, and relationships while offering strategies to reclaim control. The book contrasts the intentional designs of these hook-filled experiences with historical addictions, highlighting how ubiquitous technology has become an inescapable part of daily life, affecting everybody from kids to adults, and presenting solutions like setting boundaries and finding fulfilling analog alternatives. Adler alters many behaviors gaming are addictive, with half of the U.S. population struggling at least one. You're seeing a lot of this now with sports betting. They use the like button, endless constant content feeds, and immersive environments to keep users hooked, offering triggers, actions, and setting screen-free time zones adds to limit usage, and releasing digital habits with meaningful real-world activities. And I'm going to buy this book again because I simply need to reread it as I forgot. But, okay. So you have all this stuff, and who started all of this? Many of these things, all these companies were Instagram, all these companies were funded at their startup by venture capital firms owned by the global elite, or In-Q-Tel, which is the CIA. And you go, what is a venture capital firm? Venture capital funds acquire money primarily from limited partners, which are institutional investors and high net worth individuals. These LPs commit capital to the fund, which the general partners of the VC firm then invest in promising startups. VC funds ensure capital from a diverse range of sophisticated investors. And basically, a venture capital firm is a fund that you go to and say, hey, I have this idea for startup, and then if it's anything useful, they just fund all this money and then they buy it. Private equity, all of that, and this is where they secure capital from. Pension funds, similar to alternative stock investments like the 401k that your employer gives you. Endowments and foundations pay for this, like universities, leftist-controlled areas, communist indoctrination centers, insurance companies, which is another shitbag industry, high net worth individuals who have influence with money, fund of funds, which is these are investment vehicles that primarily invest in other hedge funds and private equity funds, including VC funds. So just random money, magic money, and then sovereign wealth funds. State-owned investment funds often allocate capital to venture capital to support economic development and achieve long-term financial goals. Leftist-occupied globalist state government. Like the UK, which is just suspending elections. Okay, so anyway, that was this one. We're going to do a few other ones, but I want to thank everybody for watching. And again, wintersolaceproductions.com. We have a bunch of new promotions going, so feel free to check all those out. Thank you and have a wonderful day.